Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks to the press for being here. Senator Robinson's running a little behind, but he will be here soon. I'll give him a hard time for being a Marine who's late. He's a Navy guy. It'll be fine. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Channel 11, you lost your mic. So I'll briefly just say who is here on the panel with me. I'll give some opening remarks, and we'll jump into it. So Senator Robinson will join us. Melissa Constantino-Perubin, who's a sixth grade math teacher in the Avonworth School District, a PSEA Association or PSEA member. Aaron Ruggiero is a teacher in the Moon School District. Also a PA State Education Association member. Dr. Kelly Marsh, who's a PA legislation lead for PA Unplugged. And Kim Francisco Martinez, who's a senior at Duquesne University, graduated high school
in 2022.
So we're here to talk about, I don't have a smartphone in front of me, which is why I won't be distracted. We're here to talk about smartphones. And it's at the right time of year, I think. Back to school. I sent my two oldest back to school yesterday. So thank you for our teachers for helping us get back to school going. Look, I come at this work thinking about smartphones at school, in the classroom, as a dad, as a parent. I've read works like The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He's briefed my dad's caucus. We've heard from him and others in our dad's caucus about the impacts of smartphones and social media on kids and in the classroom. And I see the clear evidence. Big tech, social media, smartphones are hurting our kids at school and beyond. I think we see this in terms of outcomes in school. I saw some survey of high school teachers, 72% of whom said phone distraction is a problem in the classroom. We know it's hurting mental and physical health, and these stats I'm going to read are terrible. So from 2010 to 2020, the suicide rate for adolescents went up 167% among girls, 91% among boys. That same time period, ER visits for self-harm went up 188% for girls, 48% for boys. That's a crisis. That's terrible. It's impacting social relationships among kids who become young adults. And so we know these devices and apps can be designed and often are designed to be addictive. And so what do we do about it? And I start from a place of I think our classrooms should be free of those distractions so kids can focus on learning. That might look different and already does look different from school to school. I'm a federal legislator, right? I'm thinking about this from the national perspective. Senator Robinson will talk about what he sees at the Harrisburg at the state level. I think a lot of people agree with me. I launched a survey from my office last week. We had north of 700 responses. 76% of them said that yes, schools should get smartphones out of K through 12 classrooms. That lines up with public polling I've seen that sometimes it's 80% or more who say that. I've also asked all school districts in my congressional district, 59 of them, about their policies. I've heard back from over 2/3. The other third or so will be having fun phone calls with me sometime soon, asking what their policies are. The responses have been mixed. Some schools have bell-to-bell bans. Some schools leave it to teacher discretion. Some schools say the kid's got to check in the phone in a pouch or a device, or they've got to stay in a locker or a classroom. The point is the school districts are all over the place, and there's some flexibility. I think that probably has to happen, but I'm not seeing a consistent approach district by district. And that, to me, shows the need for some leadership, the state level, the federal level, to do something, to get some action going. And as you will see, and you'll hear from Senator Robinson, this is bipartisan, right? I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican. In Washington, it's been bipartisan. That's a rare thing in this environment. It's a good thing. It actually means they think that we have more ability to get something done, both in Washington and in Harrisburg. But also we got to hear from people. So that's what today is about, to hear from folks, educators, student and former student, advocate in these issues who studies it. And that's what I'm trying to do to shape what I will do as a congressman on this issue. I'm not just a parent or a dad, but as a legislator. And so thank you all for being here. My goal, process-wise, is those surveys I talked about, the phone calls and the questions I've been asking of districts. This roundtable will shape what I will ultimately produce as a report and legislation I'll support, and we'll share that with the public once we've got it. So I will stop talking. I'll go give each person a few moments to say some opening remarks, and then we'll get into some discussion. Melissa, I will start with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Melissa Constantino-Perubin. I am a math teacher in the Avonworth School District. Aaron and I both serve as National Education Association. We're on the board of directors at PSEA and NEA, and we are always here to help Chris. As a teacher, I have one perspective. As a mom, I have a perspective. But I also have a perspective as a person with a medical device. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I have multiple type 1 diabetics in the history of my classroom. So I think sometimes when we think about cell phones, we think a blanket statement, no one needs them, no one should have them, no one should touch them, but that's a life-saving device for me. So as a parent and as a teacher, I have one perspective, but I also know that it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Thank you. Erin?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Ruggiero. As Melissa mentioned, I am also an NEA director. I'm a high school teacher in an area school district. I'm also a mom, and I'm a mom in Pittsburgh Public School District. So, PSEA's position on this kind of legislation is very much that it is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all policy per district. And I agree with that for lots of reasons. Again, like Melissa, I wear many hats. I teach high school. I understand that high school and elementary school, for instance, are very different animals. And as a high school teacher, I see the distraction and I definitely want it out of my instructional time. But I also see a responsibility in teaching digital citizenship and teaching our students how to appropriately use their phones in professional environments, et cetera, et cetera. We have medical issues. We have students that are EMS workers. We have English language learners. We have kids who have all kinds of learning needs. So each district is going to see what kinds of needs that they have and perhaps then, construct a policy that makes the most sense for them. As a city mom, my son has to ride public transportation to and from school. And that's very fluid, as we know with our public transportation system right now.
We have work to do there too.
So when we think about that, his transportation needs could change in the middle of the day. Now, his school does have a policy that instructional time is a no, but lunchtime is a yes. So I appreciate that so I can have contact with my child to make arrangements if that needs to happen. So I can see that perspective as well. So realistically, thinking about policy, yes. But the reality of some of the needs that come along with what is really part of our society now, and again, teaching our kids to be good digital citizens is an important piece.
Thank you. Kim?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Martinez. I'm a senior at the King University. I graduated 3 years ago from high school, so I kind of offer a different perspective. During my time in high school, there was no rigid rules around cell phone usage. So I was at a time where I was able to use my phone at all times. I had access to it whenever I wanted. So I kind of bring that perspective was it really beneficial for me to have my phone with me? Or could I have benefited, maybe improved my studying habits and my attention span had I not been able to use my phone during class? Now as a college student, I kind of reflect on my time during high school and made me think, okay, if I didn't have my phone, would I have been better coming into this space if I hadn't had it? So I just kind of want to share my insights today, my experience, and answer any questions.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yes, hi, my name is Kelly Marsh. I'm here representing a statewide coalition that we launched called Pennsylvania Unplugged. We represent over 2,000 families in 6 counties across the state, many of which are mental health experts, medical professionals, teachers, educators, school board directors, and we are in constant communication with them as well as with parents across the nation through our network of nonprofits and thought leaders that have been operating in this kind of tech and children's space for over 10 years now. And I just wanted this, and I'm here to say that there's a real movement happening with parents, and it's not only in this town or Allegheny County, but really across the entire country. Parents just are eager to kind of push back on this device-based childhood. The way that screens have kind of rapidly come down and have integrated and are taking over the lives of teens and young children. And everyone is having the same battles, right? We have parents of young children saying that you can't even take your family to a playground, to a restaurant, or even to a doctor's office waiting room without seeing everyone glued to these screens. And we even hear a lot from parents, frustrated parents of teenagers that are struggling and just wishing that they would have just delayed getting those devices to their children. And what we felt in our guts and that we now know is true, as the congressman said, is we now have data on this. And you talked a lot about the public health statistics, so I won't go into that. But there is a real epidemic happening right now and deteriorating attention spans. So we started Pennsylvania Unplugged for this reason, to kind of bring all of those parents together. And we have a common goal, which is really to shift our approach on how we deal with electronics and social media for our children and teenagers. This is ultimately a collective action problem, right? Of course, there's work that we have to do in our homes to make different decisions, but we do need to partner with other stakeholders in the community and in schools. And even small changes can really make a big impact. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kim, maybe give you the first question because you're the closest to this as having been a student and still are a student.
Yeah.
You talked about it a little bit in what you said. What was it like, right, being a high school student? How many alerts in a classroom or throughout the day would you see on your smartphone when you were 17 or something?
Yeah, so like I said, my time in high school, this wasn't a conversation yet. So a lot of kids had access to their phones at all time, even myself included. So I would, in between classes, during study hall in particular, I remember kids were able to watch a movie or, scroll on social media and maybe not do their homework how they should have been doing at study hall. It's just correct, right? But in my time, we didn't really necessarily use them as learning devices. We kind of put them on. I guess we kind of use them sometimes for Cahoots or little things like that, but it was never anything rigid, everyone has to bring their phones to do this, because in my high school we had Chromebooks. So everyone was given on a laptop, and everything you could do on your phone, it could be done on a computer. So that kind of, the access I had on my phone was more so of a distraction than anything for me personally, and for everyone, I guess, on my peers as well, because it wasn't really a tool.
Were people, texting and on social media throughout the day? What that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of students would kind of put their phone on top of their computer and pretend to be listening when in reality they're scrolling. And that's just what it looked like. I mean, these are young kids. My high school experience was very unique because I was a high school student during COVID. So in 2020, when COVID struck, it was a pivotal point for a lot of students. I mean, I was a lot older, but I know a lot of kids were elementary and middle school. So I can't imagine as someone who had a transition entirely online, being younger around the situation was probably amplified. I transitioned my high school in my junior year, so I was entirely hybrid, and making friends was extremely difficult. As someone who likes to say they're very extroverted, having that extra layer of difficulty was really challenging because everyone hid behind a screen. And even when we were back in person my senior year, it wasn't the same because I felt like we lacked that face-to-face interactions because it was no longer a thing. So I definitely do think that COVID really affected things, and I think is why we have a problem now with kids being so focused and so addicted to their phones. Even adults now being at work. I know all of us
Not
do
just
it.
kids.
Not just kids. I think everybody. I really think that we experienced something that had never been done before. COVID was really a changing time period as it had never been done before. So I think that it kind of affected everybody, but more so these kids who are younger and are still learning, their brains still developing. So I definitely do think that played a part in my experience personally.
Well, I'm going to come to the teachers. So Aaron and Melissa, tell me about if it's changed, how it's changed, but what it's like to deal with policing if you have to, phones on kids' laps. What's it feel like as a teacher in the classroom?
It has been a challenge, and Melissa and I actually started our careers together 25 years ago, and it's very different experience than it was when we first started. It's been a lot of learning about what's going to work to engage our students. In my school district, we do have a policy that during instructional time, phones need to be away, and each teacher has discretion as to how to make that happen. A lot of folks in my building, we have holders for them, and that's where they go, and then they can pick them up on the way out. And for this year, they're going to have the freedom in the hallway, and they've always had the cafeteria. Now, again, I teach high school, so this is by building,
Sure.
building by building. And that has improved things. When the phones are secure during class, I've seen better engagement, for sure. So it's definitely something that I support, while I also see, at least for high school kids, the need for some access at some point during the day, because whether we like it or not, they're here.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of our high school students depend on those devices for lots of different reasons, whether they might care for somebody at home, whether, you know, they need to be in touch with work. Again, we have a lot of volunteer firefighters, EMS workers, whatever. You know, they do need that access. So it's complicated,
Yeah.
but it's workable, you know.
Middle school, a little different. What's that look like?
It's different, right? I teach sixth grade, and I always love the first half of sixth grade. Many of the kids do not have cell phones, and then for the holidays, that's their present. That's their holiday gift, and then they come back in January, and then a lot of the drama starts. The phone drama, the cyberbullying, everything. So there definitely is a shift. I'm not saying that all of my sixth graders don't. Many of I teach at Avonworth. We start on Wednesday, and many of the students will come in with cell phones, and that's what they do. We are different at Avonworth because we don't have lockers. The kids carry their book bags at all times, so they do have their devices on them at all times, but the expectation is that they're in their book bags and they're turned off. We do have a new policy, Chris, for the year that I hope they shared with you, that in the middle school specifically, we should not see them at all. And that they have like one warning, and the second time it's a confiscation, or like they have to take them to the office or what have you. So for many years, it was teacher by teacher, class by class, what the policy was within the classroom. And I feel like I have an engaging classroom and haven't necessarily had that issue. I will say, you always have those students that are like, they use the pass, 5 times during a given class period, and you're like, they're in the bathroom texting their parents, right? So it is a distraction. It is something that we have to deal with, but relationships matter. And when you think something like that is happening, I am lucky enough that I can have good relationships with my parents, my students, call home, hey, I just want to let you know this person was in the bathroom 5 times. I'm a little concerned about their health, that route. But I think the minute they step out of my class, they pull the cell phone out of their pocket or their book bag, they're checking things out, and it does add a lot of distraction to their day. Hi, Devin.
You're joined by Senator Devlin Robinson. We're in your district.
Yep.
So, to give the perspective on the state level, and I'm going to tee up with a question, if that's all right, which is,
Absolutely.
what are you working on in Harrisburg? Kelly, I'm going to come to you next on some of the things you talked about, but we've heard from Kim, who's a college student, had been in high school a couple of years back. Aaron and Melissa talking about the teacher perspective. You and I attacking this from the state and the federal level. What are you working on? What are you worried about? What do you think might happen in Harrisburg?
Absolutely. So, I have a bill coming out that is a bell-to-bell ban on cell phones and like devices. Okay. So I remember I was a kid.
Yeah.
Okay. I know all the ways around it. We came out with the Faraday bags that we had a grant program so that you could lock up your student's cell phone whenever they came in, and they were able to unlock it. Okay, we know how they can get around those things. They have 2 cell phones, so they're able to give one cell phone and just be like, oh, here you go. And then, I'm able to check the other one. They've got the watches. They've got plenty of other ways to communicate. But this is just one way to kind of sit there and say, look, we want to make sure that you're here going to school to learn. And that's the purpose of education. So we can put down the distractions for a couple hours. In our changing world and our changing society, there are going to be continual distractions. And this is just one way to say, put the cell phone down and let's start focusing on what you're supposed to be focusing on. We banned cell phone use in automobiles. And it was one thing, whenever I see that text message come up on my screen, I keep thinking, well, I wonder what they want. I wonder what it could be. But at the end of the day, if they really needed me, they can call me. Okay? Let's put the text messages down and let's wait.
Thank you. And I think, look, the fact that you see both state legislator, federal, I made the bipartisan point that you've got Democrats, Republicans who are both working on this, federal and state level. It tells you something. Maybe that goes to my question to you, Kelly. You talked about some of the momentum that parents and others are organizing around this. Where's that coming from? Why do you think that's been happening? Is it just around smartphone use? I mean, what are the issues that are animating the folks and the parents that you're organizing with?
Yeah, no, thanks so much. So I think, and I mentioned this, that I think all of us kind of felt this way for a while, but recent data really kind of opened the door. And honestly, nod to Jonathan Haidt's book, it really helped kind of make this more mainstream. And what started maybe as conversations that you would have with your husband or maybe a friend in your living room has really evolved to organizing a couple folks in your community, maybe a book club, to speaking out at your school board, asking for some changes, or even reaching out to legislators, which we have started doing. And I think really there's precedence for this, and I think the momentum is just the wave is happening. And when we started this advocacy at the state level, there was only there was less than 10 states that had statewide legislation, and we were really hoping that Pennsylvania would kind of be one of those leaders. And now today there's 34 states that have statewide legislation on this, 17 of which plus DC that has passed the best practice policy, which is bell to bell. And we're just here because we're speaking with parents in these states with the policies that are successful, as well as parents in states where the language was unclear and there's a lot of unintended consequences and they failed. So we're just saying there's an opportunity here to really learn and identify what those best practices are, and identify some of those unintended consequences so we can avoid those pitfalls here in Pennsylvania. And we just want to make sure that all of that information is taken into consideration while we are pursuing.
Well, I'll ask it to you, Kelly, and then everyone else, please chime in if you'd like. What are the things we need to be thinking about that has worked well or hasn't, right, in states or even counties or whomever has legislated here? Where have they gotten it right? Where have they gotten it wrong? What should we be thinking about?
Yeah, no, thanks. This is like such a nuanced conversation, and we always say there's so many different flavors. And one of the things, when you look at this, just neighboring school districts will approach this completely differently.
I see that in your district.
And I think, ultimately we're feeling, and now that states have some of this bell-to-bell legislation, this is ultimately an equity issue, right? Because we do have data. We now have data from states that have enacted this and other countries that have done this. Students, their academic, their social, emotional, their school community, the mental health, the spirit in the school, all of these check marks are happening, so we know that. And I think a few of those things, and Aaron, you brought up the pouches. So one of the things that we have heard as those like pouches at the front of the classroom where all the students come in, put their phone in the pouch.
Is that what Moon has?
Not universally, but
No.
some of the teachers do.
Okay.
I have one in my
Classroom by classroom.
Classroom
Okay.
by classroom. Many of us do.
Yes. And I would love to hear your perspective on this. But from the parents, we're hearing, and from the students, that they said, the school implemented that policy saying you have to, every time you walk in the classroom, put it in this cubby and you sit, have class, and then on the way out, you take it again. And the students remarked that it actually made the problem worse because you have now just directly put that cell phone back into the kids' hands on the way to the hallway, and everyone goes into the hallway like this. Yep. So it's these things that we don't, I didn't think about, I didn't appreciate, I'm not in your classrooms, that just kind of were really helpful to us. We do have access to model legislation from this national network, and some of the exceptions that that they have are for medical devices. That is something we absolutely would want an exception for. We would want exceptions for volunteer firefighters. We want IEP plans, 504 plans, exceptions. But really what we're getting at is what the senator was talking about. It's really changing the culture in that school, and really what do we value? And if we do value that during this time they're there to both have academic as well as this social emotional connection, then I think these best practices are how to achieve that.
Okay.
Thoughts?
8.
Okay. I'm gonna go to Kim. If not, okay. So you're not that far from this, right? You're a senior now.
Yes.
So what would you have wanted to see your day look like?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting about the pouches because I would think, okay, yeah, like if during the class period we had them in our, we called them phone jail because I remember we did have that too, but not every teacher had it back in my day when I was in high school. But
Just wait, it gets worse.
oh my goodness. No, so like some teachers wanted us just to have, we could have our phones flipped upside down, which we now know is not effective at all. Because you hear the buzz, even having it in your pocket, you hear the buzz, you're like, oh my gosh, you texted me, or what did I get? Or so if there's an emergency, I want to check it, it's just kind of, I guess, a now human nature. It's your instinct to want to check your phone. So when I hear about that, the statistics about it not working, it kind of surprises me because I think that it really comes down to how much access they have to at home. So say we implement this ban on the PA because we do not yet have a ban in schools in PA. If we were to implement this for 8 hours, kids are dedicated to being in school and focusing on school, which I think they should be. I mean, school should be for learning and everything, but I think that there has to be a lot of different criteria that goes into this because, like we said, there's medical emergencies. Kids sometimes do need to access their parents, but I remember like if you had to go to the nurse, they could call home for you. Or if mom's drop me off, my mom had to drop off my gym clothes all the time. She would come to the office, drop them off, and say, hey, it's for my daughter, Kimberly. And then they would contact me. So I wonder when we kind of made that change where it wasn't the school contact the parents, the student needs to contact their parents if they have an emergency. So I wonder what happened there. And I really do hope we find a solution to maybe keeping the phones, but just having a way that they can see it so we have more engagement. But it definitely is a topic that I'm interested about.
Right.
If I could jump
Please.
in.
Yeah.
So, as a parent, what I'm trying to raise a well-balanced, well-rounded child, I hear a lot about this, and I think, in a safe environment where obviously these amazing teachers, these incredible administrators and school nurses are there at their disposal, what a great opportunity for them to problem solve. I forgot my gym clothes. What do I do? Talk to the adults. I cut my finger. Don't text your mom and say what to do, but actually go talk to that school nurse. And again, I love sort of, those kids these days, we don't, it's our fault as parents. We kind of have this ability to track and constantly communicate, and it's the desire, this evolutionary desire to need that. But is it the best? Is it? And so I just wanted to share that.
I think too, thinking about that, and as a mom, it was a very, very hard thing for me to get. My son is now in 8th grade, but I got him the phone in 6th grade because that's when he started riding the bus or the T to school. And so that I, as a parent, set that up to come with a whole lot of limitations, and he still has a whole lot of limitations on that phone, and we don't universally see that. So there are a lot of important pieces to this and a lot of important exceptions and all of those kinds of things, but the education piece for families too, I think, is really important. I think that we need to be looking, and this is universally when we're talking about education issues,
Absolutely.
making sure that we have family buy-in and involvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, along those lines, something that at Pennsylvania Unplugged, we are so excited to offer is alternative device fairs, where we are hosting events. So instead of a smartphone, for example, there are a whole lot of other options that you can still allow for that communication, because absolutely, like our community here is a walking community. We're very privileged for that. But kids perhaps at a younger age, maybe than would be normal, are allowed to kind of walk to school or up here to the shops in the village. So it's almost ironic that in this area, the smartphones have actually come a lot earlier because of that. And so
For navigation or getting a message.
Yeah, and so we have, we are excited about, with that education piece, absolutely, is just sharing with parents that, hey, actually you can achieve that goal and not allow all of these other persuasive design and addictive algorithms on there.
I will say that there are times where, as a parent, you need to get a hold of your kid, right? And I always say, well, they can call the office will call me, and we'll get you in touch. And then you have that kid that's sitting in your class and texting in their book bag, and you're like, put that away. I was just texting my mom. Practice change. I was texting my mom. So, we have to, as parents and as a society, we don't need access to our students and our children 100% of the time. And I think that's a cultural change that we have to accept.
We need rounds of applause.
Yes. But we need to accept that sometimes someone's not going to answer and they're not going to text
Yeah.
back right away, and they're safe still.
Yes.
They're okay.
Yeah.
They're in my classroom, and I'm going to love them and protect them and do everything I can. They are okay.
Yeah.
And I think we have to have a cultural shift to say we're not 100% accessible at all times, and that's how society should be.
Yeah.
What's this debate sound like in Harrisburg? I mean, in Washington, I think it's just starting, to be frank, and it hasn't gotten a ton of attention.
Yeah, it's bipartisan, bicameral. A lot of people are talking about it, trying to figure out how we want to implement it. Is the discussion.
Is this part of, I know that there's a whole budget impasse, but is this part of it? Can it be part of it?
I don't know if it's going to happen this year. But remember the legislative cycle is 2 years in Harrisburg, so we still will continue to bring it up. One of the questions is, well, maybe during gym class or during recess or the lunchroom, they can get their phone. And myself personally, I say, it should be bell to bell, because whenever you come back from recess, you're still thinking about
That's exactly right.
what just happened, and now I don't have my phone. I mean, how many of you have thought about even just a regular conversation, and then you go to bed at night and you're like, man, I wish I would have said that.
Yeah.
And that's what kids are going to do with their cell phones too, and so it's an anxiety-inducing tool. So we want to make sure that we limit it, and again, get back to the basics of education. It's about reading, writing, arithmetic, and growing a successful workforce.
What you said resonates really well. So we've spent a lot of time identifying schools in Pennsylvania that are bell to bell. They have leaders that have reacted to the data and said, we need to do something. Our teachers are complaining, we need to do something, and they've implemented these bell to bell policies. And unprompted, they all say the same thing, that this rule has transformed. They actually use that word, transformed their school building, because again, it's not just about the learning. It's the lunchroom. Lunchtime is no longer screen time. There isn't, like, they would say that their guidance counselors were so overwhelmed. When I spoke with Erie McDowell, Principal Scott Quivy, is like the guidance counselors were just so overwhelmed with social media drama, because things just go
Throughout
so
the day.
quickly. Yes, and stuff from last night comes into the school building and just continues, and these poor, amazing humans that are there to really help address some of these issues don't even have time to address the other issues because they're dealing with this social media drama. So again, it does sound, sort of, I get the want for that kind of middle of the road, but there is this way to say, hey, look, you do need to get these away. You do, because it's always there. If it's on the desk, if it's in your backpack, you're thinking about it. There are studies that show that there's the brain drain, that the mere presence of the device actually distracts you. And we just are, in Erie, they actually counted the number of they had all the students actually put their devices up on the teacher's desk. They did this drawing for one day, and the teacher actually just tallied how many notifications went off during just one period,
Yeah.
one 80-minute period, and it was over 167.
I
On
saw
average.
I saw data. I think it's in the Anxious Generation, or maybe somewhere else, about in an average school day how many notifications a high school senior would get. It was north of 100.
200,
Did you know the number?
average per child, like per student, is 234 notifications during the school day.
It's a lot.
Yes. And just that, there's all this science, and it's fascinating, just about just hearing or seeing that text message you mentioned, driving in the car. It elicits a response in us, and it does. It's a little bit of anxiety, but it's there, and you're not focused. Your attention is fragmented, and it's certainly great that you passed that for driving, but we would also like that for our kids in the classroom.
I actually have a question, and maybe it's for Kelly, maybe it's for Dylan or Chris, I'm not sure. But has there been any discussion about social media in particular and legislation for kids under 18?
Thank you.
I have. I can start at the federal.
Okay.
There's a bill, the Kids Online Safety Act, which has been introduced in the last Congress, in the House and the Senate. It didn't come to a vote on the floor in either. There are bills. I was a co-sponsor of the last Congress. There's a bill that a colleague of mine will likely reintroduce that's about raising the age of internet personhood. Essentially, now a 13-year-old can sign a contract to create an account with any social media company that would raise that to 16. And much like the Kids Online Safety Act, put guardrails around the way algorithms can collect data about kids, what kinds of advertising is off limits, think tobacco, booze, et cetera. And so there's legislation in Washington. I'll leave to you to talk about what's going on in Harrisburg, but I will be honest, big tech is going to fight those bills. And those bills have been bipartisan.
So this is really our main focus right now in Harrisburg. I don't recall a bill that has to do with something that's as broad sweeping, because that's usually the federal
we've got-
jurisdiction. But this is where our jurisdiction kind of begins and ends. In
I mean,
schools.
it's the greatest concern, right? My deal with my son is that he can have a phone, but if he touches social media, he's getting a cricket or whatever.
I would love to have a flip phone.
So,
Well,
It's great.
oh, please.
No, it's a great point, and it's something else that we are, we care a lot about phones in schools, and we do feel, but we're not just here as parents trying to ban something and make a rule in a school building, right? This transcends sort of a rule in a building here. We're really trying to achieve that cultural shift that you said, and this really does. We have to come at this from a couple ways. We are excited about COSA and other similar bills. The COPA, last time, that was 1998, 1996, that children online protective legislation was passed, and there was floppy disks around. So we are overdue, no offense, and we need to do something about this. But yeah, that's something else like we are advocating for and tapping into those nonprofits to really help kind of galvanize that effort.
It's a great discussion. Thank you, everybody. To me, shows the importance that you got to have everybody at least in the room who understands and will implement it, who deals with this at home, who's lived it. We've got work to do. My takeaway, not just from this discussion, but from the survey that I've done, the input I've gotten from folks, people want us to do something here. Democrats, Republicans, suburban parts of my district, rural, more urban parts. I see and hear from the same perspectives from people. They want us to do something. I think we know we need to do. I think being careful and crafting good legislation is the job that we're all elected to do. We're legislators. So thanks for helping us do that. Thanks for having a good discussion. Thanks for joining me from the Harrisburg side of things,
Absolutely.
Senator.
Thanks for having me.
And for the press who came, thank you. I think they all left. But thank you guys. Oh, no, Jillian's here. Sorry.
That's right.
But thank you guys for being here. Thanks so much.
Thank
thank you.
you.